Welcome to Pick Me Up, I'm Scared, the podcast.
I'm your host, Madeline.
I'm your co-host, David.
And we are excited to be here with a new, I think it's going to be a series, a multi-parter.
Oh boy, how many are we looking at?
I'm vibing two.
Okay.
I'm vibing a two-parter.
I love when I don't have to do anything for like 2 weeks.
I know, because we did all the research. I was researching last night until 3:30 in the morning.
That seems like your mental illness talking.
Is it mental illness or is it mental wellness?
I would love to see the Goop page on our current topic where it's like, if you get internet poisoned, you should also begin talking about the U.S. security state.
Oh,
and
it's not because of the internet. This is not a reaction to the internet.
No, but it is, I guess it's enabled by the internet.
Maybe for Elon Musk. Maybe this is Elon Musk it's a reaction from him against the internet, honestly.
So, you said, should we talk about the thing that's happening in your life?
Oh, I'm getting canceled again.
I said we are, I'm actually going to reduce it. We're putting 7 minutes on the clock.
7 minutes,
I feel like 7 minutes is...
I think that's good. You want to set a physical timer or should I do it?
I got you.
Okay, you got me. Okay. So the thing that's really funny about getting canceled on the internet is when you try to explain the situation to somebody who is not on the internet, you look insane.
Yeah, no, I told you.
It looks totally, how do you explain it to somebody?
I told you, I was like, yeah, I saw, the briefest bit of it, and I was like, this is the advice that you're given when you're a kid, which is, if a crazy person engages with you, don't engage back, because then what everyone sees is two crazy people yelling at each other.
Well, the thing is, though, they get more mad when you don't respond. And then they're like, well, Madeline didn't respond because this other person's right, and then you get actually canceled. So you don't get canceled, actually, ever, if you're like, this is fucking weird, and I didn't say or do this, stop saying this, I hate you.
I'm not your therapist, but I will recommend a therapist to you if you like, because this seems like a self-fulfilling thing. Okay, so what's happening?
It's not self-fulfilling. I'm getting canceled on the internet because I didn't vote for Kamala Harris again.
Yeah, and it's like your fault that Donald Trump is president.
I single-handedly made Donald Trump president by voting for Claudia de la Cruz in California, a state where all 54 electoral college votes went for Kamala Harris anyway, so this is a moot point. And then everyone's like, you're influenced, though. And I'm like, even if everybody who follows me, who didn't even see my videos talking about the election, somehow didn't vote for Kamala Harris, which isn't true, many of them did, and then we added those votes to Kamala Harris, she still would have lost. And then people are like, well, what? Not just you. You were a percentage of it. And I'm like, okay, then you mean multiple people were unhappy with the Democrats? Then it's not just me.
Uh-huh.
So leave me alone.
So you are right, because first of all, I'm going to say that this is going to encourage an already unhealthily inflated ego.
Oh, yeah. I single-handedly swayed the American election. So if you are running for office in 2028, get ready now, because you might want to start putting in your bids for my endorsement. And apparently, I can single-handedly make or break these elections here.
I'm going to say, and you will back me up on this.
Yes, probably. Maybe not. Maybe not. What is it?
The influence behind the influence.
It's
me. It's me. David
can sway me.
So
famously, I agree with everything David says.
Always. And so I will accept. I don't need hair plugs yet, but I might. So we could do an Eric Adams thing where I go to Turkey for hair plugs.
Yeah.
I would also just like to see Turkey. Turkish government. If you're trying to... I don't know
that you politically might want to align yourself with the Turkish government.
I'm not. I don't,
And so close to Glendale?
Fair enough.
Listeners in Glendale, strike that from your memory.
Yeah, actually, technically, I do live in Little Armenia.
Yeah, it's not. David is not endorsing the Armenian genocide.
But I am
You're going to get us extra canceled now.
I am saying that they seem like the most visible foreign government that is actively just paying random ass people and bullshit.
Okay, so you feel like there's a monetization opportunity here.
Yeah, and as clearly the influence behind the influence, I need to fucking capitalize on this now.
Yeah, we should make some money. I get it. Yeah, so David and I are here to help you buy an election, is what we're really saying. Beyonce, waste of money.
That's crazy.
Waste of money. Me and David...
Did you see the one thing that I did really enjoy was she did a new perfume line, and then the comments on her little Instagram thing for it was like, "Girl, we're broke. What are you doing?"
Oh,
which was
wow!
funny.
Class consciousness is rising. Okay, interesting. I did not see that. I appreciate that. So anyway, so the internet still thinks that I single-handedly got Donald Trump elected, and then they were like, "Of course, you voted for a socialist. You're a cisgender woman who hates trans people and Palestinian people." And I was like, I am literally trans people, honestly. Technically, I am non-binary. I am trans people. And also, my cousins are Palestinian. Like, please. Some people just don't agree with you. Some people just don't agree with you.
I feel like, right, listen.
And people were really mad. They were like, no. But then from there... there was a whole bunch of made-up stuff that I didn't do that everyone was like, it's the same thing. It's like Madeline burned my crops and pillaged my village. Madeline killed my puppy.
Well, that
Madeline
one is
stole
true.
my car.
I saw you do this. I saw you went out into the fields.
I did.
With a torch.
I did burn the crops, but that was one time, and it was a while ago.
And you famously do kill puppies. That is, I have known that about you for a long time.
I am vegan except
but
for
I'm
puppy
glad.
killing. Yeah, I am.
I'm glad that it's finally getting the attention it deserves. I think we're at about 7 minutes.
Okay, I get 1 more minute.
Oh, you're literally...
I counted.
Okay,
I get 1 more minute to rant about the internet, and what I am going to say about the internet in this 1 minute is that I severely underestimated how dumb people are. And that's on me. And that's my fault. I thought people, basically rational, basically smart, basically intelligent, you present them with information, they'll be like, this, I can see that this is real and this is fake. No. Did you know? That's not true.
Madeline,
we are all idiots. We are all dumbasses.
I have to point this out to you. For years, you made fun of anytime I would bring up any philosophy thing in the world, you would be like, that's the stupidest shit in the world.
Yeah.
And I would be like, no, you are, like, you should actually be paying attention to this, like, even slightly, right?
Yeah, this is karma? Is that what you're saying?
No,
this is my karma?
I'm just saying
it might
that
be karma.
I'm going to recommend that you read the very short book, How to Do Things with Words by John Austin, because the constantive meaning, as Austin would say, the truth content of what you did not, like, single-handedly lose the election for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, here's the thing. I think I gotta figure out my goals with the internet. I think, what's my goal here? What am I trying to do? I'm not trying to win hearts and minds. Right now, I'm enjoying yelling at people for being stupid. But I should do that from a burner account. I should make a burner account. I don't have a burner account. I should make a burner account and use that to yell at people for being stupid.
I like the internet for seeing the fun fixations of what I'm going to assume might be neurodivergent people and their obsessions with, for example, trains or finding cool rocks on the beach.
Yes.
I think those are great ways to use the internet. And I think you should stick with that. I think anything else that the internet has ever done, not worth it. It's not worth it.
It's really bad. You're right. Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of, we're here to teach you some shit on the internet today.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So today we're talking about USAID, which David has informed me everybody else calls USAID. And because I read things and I don't listen to people talk, I am going to just keep calling it USAID probably because it's so in my head as USAID.
Yeah.
So David might call it the right thing, and I might call it the wrong thing.
I don't fucking know what the right thing is. I'm just telling you that so far as I understand from the conventions, right, like...
Of Chapo Trap House.
And
John Oliver.
Which I was like, oh, Madeline wants to do this tonight, and I saw that it was up on Max this morning while I was having my coffee, and was like...
So you got the lid perspective. You got the dirtbag left perspective.
Now I'm getting
the shrill, angrily Chihuahua left perspective. That's what I think we really bring. We really bring the Chihuahua left perspective.
I don't feel like you can include me in, like, I like...
That's true. What kind of a dog would you be?
I feel like I'm not dog energy.
You are dog energy.
I'm giving you a look.
Yeah, you are giving me a look.
Well,
there's a dog here. What kind of a dog would David be? If
sound off in the comments.
Sound off in the comments. If you're a subscriber on Patreon and you've seen videos of David, what kind of a dog would David be?
Busted ass, hairless dog?
No, I am thinking one of those dogs that has the eyes that are too human and it's kind of big and everyone's like, this thing never should have been made.
Oh, a golden doodle?
Yeah.
No, I do remember my dog Pepper who was all busted and weird and fucked up.
Love.
I feel like
You think it'd be that? You think
yeah.
Pepper.
Who like wheezed when he tried to run.
Okay, so my thought though is that you are like something all-American, but also an abomination of it. That's why I'm going golden doodle.
Loving the boost to my self-confidence here.
Well, I think it's like you could have been something all-American, but something in you broke.
Yeah, well, a lot in me broke.
Same.
Probably at the hands of no.
Okay,
I'm trying
okay.
to.
So I do want to preface this for everybody going into the episode today. David and I are both in a real agitated mood, so you might get to hear the first Madeline David fight on Maine.
Well, no, I just put a nicotine gum in my
so
house,
David's chilling. Never mind. Whatever. I'm just gonna be right.
I might double up though.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, party. Go for it, man.
So if you hear me throwing up in the background, that's because I accidentally swallowed
I was like, overdosing
gum.
on nicotine gum? Swallowing it. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Okay, so we're going to talk about USAID. Everybody else calls it. I'm so sorry I failed you already. But the thing about it is that it's a really topical thing. Everybody's talking about USAID right now. Nobody's talking enough
they
about USAID.
went from 1,500 employees to 300 or some fakakta silliness.
Oh, it is more wild than that.
Yeah.
It is pretty intense. So, famously last month, January 2025, Elon Musk, the famed billionaire idiot, started cutting the federal government's budget in his new role of special government employee, aka President's little buddy.
Dog.
Yeah, President's little weird lapdog. And in this pursuit, Musk announced the intention of shutting down a government agency called USAID. USAID is what I call it. USAID. Right. Okay. The United States Agency for International Development. In January, employees were cut from 10,000 to around 8,000 immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And plans in the future were hoping to reduce the number of staff to just 290 people.
Okay.
This cut was set to save $68 billion annually. Now, I will say, as somebody who hates American intervention abroad, $68 billion annually is enough to end homelessness and hunger in the United States.
Sick, so that's what we're doing, right? Hell yeah!
No, of course not. Why could we have anything good?
Department of Government Handouts. Am I right?
Doe. Department of... What starts with a U? It could be Doe. We could change it. We could fix this.
Doug.
Yeah, no, so this is like this objectively, if you were a left-wing person, you could see this and be like, yeah, fuck USAID. They're kind of evil. Also, $68 billion annually could end hunger and homelessness. That's it. That is obviously not what's fucking happening. And in this very, very weird way, it's like very strange to be a person with left-wing politics, a socialist, a communist, somebody who abhors Western imperialism, and be like, why is the Trump administration doing something that actually objectively seems not bad? And that is going to be, the whole journey we're going to go on today is going to be trying to figure out exactly what is in this for the Trump administration, because it is actually, the more you learn about this organization, pretty weird that Trump and Musk are so gung-ho about cutting this down.
Okay, so can I give you the, let's call it the hypothesis that you, since you did the research for this one.
I've got a conclusion already, but we'll wait on mine. So hit us with your hypothesis.
Right, we happen to be at the moment in which the projections of U.S. power are less important than selling off parts of the U.S. state for scraps.
I think it's a privatization thing.
Yeah, I think we're privatizing the U.S. state.
But USAID, okay, whatever. I don't want to give too much away. We're not going to, okay, that's David's hypothesis. All right. So, in February of 2025, that is the month we are currently recording this, the legality of Trump's executive order that facilitated the massive cuts to USAID started to get questioned. On February 6th, for example, lawsuits were filed. A labor union and the American Foreign Service Association both sued Trump over his plan to shut down a huge amount of USAID's operation. And they argued that the Constitution only lets Congress do that, not the president, because it's a federal agency. So the lawsuit alleged that Trump generated a global humanitarian crisis by abruptly halting the crucial work of USAID employees, grantees, and contractors. And if you're like, is that real? What does that mean? What does USAID do? We're going to get into why they would say that and exactly what USAID does. The following day, on February 7th, a federal court order temporarily paused the USAID layoffs. Judge Carl Nichols prevented Trump from placing that it was actually 2,200 USAID staff members on leave while that lawsuit from the labor union works its way through the courts. A few days later, on February 11th, USAID Inspector General Paul Martin was told that he was immediately fired from his position. And just a few days after that, on February 13th, Judge Carl Nichols extended his pause on placing USAID staffers on leave through February 21st. At the time of recording, it is Monday, February 17th, okay? And this stopped the Trump administration from taking any further action against the employees and said he will make a ruling on the case by the end of next week. So, by the time we record next week's episode, we still might not have an answer on this. Maybe it's this week, the end of this week's episode. Oh, it is this week. So by the time part 2 comes out, we'll know what happens. And we're going to learn this in real time along with you guys.
We could do a live, I don't know.
We'll figure it out. So on February 14th, which is the Friday before we recorded, this is 3 days ago as we're recording this, a federal judge, Judge Amir Ali, extended the freeze on laying off the 2,000 USAID employees as well, and also ordered the Trump administration to restore USAID's funding and conduct a detailed review of every program before making a decision on what to eliminate. Judge Ali said that the administration did not explain why a blanket suspension of all congressionally appropriated foreign aid, which set off a shockwave of upended reliance interests for thousands of agreements with businesses, nonprofits, and organizations around the country, was a rational precursor to reviewing programs. So this is what's been going on with USAID. And you kind of probably gathered, if you didn't already know from the descriptors, that USAID is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It is the arm of the federal government that we use to administer aid to other countries. And this aid could be money, it could be through businesses we have deals with, it could be arrangements with nonprofits, it could be different organizations, it could be things like building schools, giving people food, doing clean drinking water, all sorts of things. So, listening to this, you're like, well, of course Donald Trump would want to cut funding to USAID. Why would we ever do anything humanitarian? But when we get into what USAID is really up to, you're going to reverse that. You're going to be like, why would Donald Trump want to cut this? It sounds like everything Republicans love.
Yeah, but, right, like, I still think that, like, right, another way of saying doles out humanitarian aid is, like, projects U.S. influence abroad.
Exactly.
Right? Like, that's, like, the sort of obvious thing. And projecting what is sometimes called soft power.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't really seem like, I'm sure, like, if you told Trump, if you just, like, said the word soft power to anyone in the Trump administration.
Oh, he would hate that.
They would be
so
like,
right.
That's so fucking dumb.
Get
hard
out of
power.
Here. Hard power, yes. Wow, hard power. You're totally right.
Like, that's it.
That kind of makes sense, yeah. Like, the optics of soft power weren't good.
Well, no, it's just not cool.
It's not cool. The optics, yeah, it's not cool, exactly. So, what exactly is USAID, the United States Agency for International Development? Well, like we mentioned, they're responsible for administering most of our civilian foreign aid here in the U.S., and their average annual disbursements have been around $23 billion every year since 2001.
Sick.
So now they're up to $68 billion. It's averaged out. It's really grown. It's one of the largest official aid agencies that exists in the world, and it accounts for more than half of all U.S. foreign assistance that's doled out to other countries. We currently have projects in over 100 countries worldwide, and it is funded through congressional approval. So, it is considered, at the same time, an official component of U.S. foreign policy while operating under the guidance of the President, the Secretary of State, and the National Security Council. So those names should set off some alarms. It is a tool of basically military interests abroad.
Yeah.
Yeah, our hard power interests abroad.
Yeah, it's the, like, hearts and minds side of things.
Right. And as of 1998, USAID has been considered an independent establishment. But it wasn't always like that. It was previously more directly linked to the State Department itself. Mm-hmm. So the way that USAID was created was with the passing of a Foreign Assistance Act on September 4th, 1961, and it was an executive order. Do you know who signed it in 1961?
What is that, Kennedy?
Kennedy, JFK, yeah. Good. And it reorganized already existing U.S. foreign assistance programs into just one thing. And this created this official agency that was going to just administer all the economic aid that our country wanted to send to other places. So, what was the goal, you think, of JFK doing this? If you had to guess the President of the United States' goal in creating an agency...
He was like, man, sending a bunch of, like, Cuban, quote-unquote, refugees back to Cuba didn't work out so well. What if we sent water?
Okay. So, David, would you categorize that as fighting the communists?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But, like...
Then you would be right. His goal was to fight the communists. This was the goal of creating USAID.
Actually, I can't remember when Bay of Pigs actually happened.
I think it might have been after.
Yeah, but he was like, this Dulles guy seems kind of drunk. We should set something else up.
Yeah, we got the CIA cooking. They're doing their Cold War thing. And basically, yeah, Kennedy is like, we've got to find more ways to counter USSR influence during the Cold War. So we basically thought here in the United States that we should use that soft power, use our money to influence people as well. And that this might help kind of give us more sway globally. Remember, at this time, communism is super popular, and the United States is really scared it's going to take off here. So we're like, we got to expand Western hegemony at all costs, and quite literally financial costs at that. So USAID's goal then became funneling money around the globe in support of the American government, and by extension, American business interests. And this is hilarious because if you've paid attention to the news recently, you've probably seen Trump claim that it is full of, quote, radical left-wing lunatics, USAID.
Well, they do tend to get in there. It's like the Rosenbergs. Actually, I feel like the Rosenbergs were recently vindicated as, like, not nuclear spies. I feel like that
really?
Was new. Yeah.
Oh, I missed
it. Card-carrying communists, yada yada, but, like, not the spies or the... Yeah, in any case. But, you know, they tend to get in there. This is a Kim Philby situation.
Yes, we got some spy action going on. So while Trump is claiming that USAID is full of radical left-wing lunatics, we actually know that historically USAID was created to fight radical left-wing lunatics, and I'm using the term lunatic favorably. Positive, tone tag positive. It was used to fight the radical left in other countries around the globe, with the main purpose being to make it a tool of the capitalist owning class here in the United States to increase globalization efforts, to fuel profit, and also, to expand Western power. So, the execution of these funding projects through USAID, they would have fields involved like health and family planning, education, the environment, economic growth, democracy. And it sounds pretty nice unless you know the way the United States uses the term democracy and economic growth.
Democracy means capitalism, or at least let's call it classical liberal democracy, which involves an emphasis on private property.
Right. Anti-communist efforts, basically. And economic growth, which means take all of our IMF and World Bank deals or USAID deals, take all of our money, and totally fuck up your economy to serve Western business interests. That's how the United States uses the term economic growth. So, in practice, USAID was there to advance American political and corporate interests around the globe. They ended up forging direct partnerships with DuPont, Johnson & Johnson, Microsoft, and Coca-Cola, all under the guise of executing aid in developing countries. Or not even developing countries, in countries that had been heavily exploited many times by the United States government already. The result is that USAID ended up serving as a conduit for funding from the CIA and the State Department in the effort of implementing a number of anti-communist destabilization movements around the globe. This includes facilitating coup attempts, sowing propaganda against all of our enemies. So basically, USAID was the funding arm acting and assisting regime change operations around the globe. And this would mean undermining the governments of other countries to help overthrow them, installing more pro-USA governments there instead. Even Newsweek said Over the years, USAID has indubitably used humanitarianism as a veil for regime change efforts in countries the U.S. sees political climates as favorable. I really had to pause over indubitably because I just realized it's maybe the first time I've ever said that word out loud.
What, you're not reading Sherlock Holmes aloud to yourself often?
I said it and I was like, holy shit, is that a real word?
Wait, dude, I feel like...
There's a cartoon character who says it a lot, but I can't remember who.
I don't know, Inspector Gadget?
I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was really interesting that even Newsweek was calling this out. So basically, USAID is what people are describing as informal imperialism, but the effects are just as deadly for many people around the globe. So David, have you been online? Have you seen people in other countries cheering the destruction of USAID?
Are these people doing it at the same time that they're going to tell me about interesting trains that they saw and or cool rocks they found on the beach?
Some might.
This is because this is the only
That's
internet
the only overlap. Okay,
I try to consume because I'm trying to keep sane.
Okay, that's smart. Love that. Keep sane. I need to get on that. I really do need to figure out my internet goals. Okay, so the operations of how exactly this is happening. USAID does a number of things in a very practical way on the ground in other countries, all in the name of upholding mostly the U.S. State Department's interests. They use grants and contracts to hire out the private sector. That's where they do those business deals, but also government agencies as well as universities or NGOs to just basically execute these plans around the rest of the world that serve the interests of American government and business power. The U.S. commercial interests, the business interests, are served by U.S. law's requirement that most goods and services financed by USAID are sourced directly from U.S. vendors.
So it's also, I mean, this is, right, like, military surplus clothing or military clothing, military supplies all have to be made in the U.S.
Yes.
This seems like just an extension of, like, look, you have to shop at home.
Yes, exactly.
If you're gonna do a coup.
Yeah. And this is exactly what's happening. American farms supplied about 41% of the food aid, according to a 2021 report by the Congressional Research Service. There are also a lot of public and private partnerships that happen around the globe with other businesses and governments, but, most goods and services do have to come from the U.S. directly. And when USAID is active somewhere where troops are on the ground, USAID also engages in military operations.
Oh, really?
Yes, they're totally involved.
So you should tell the Trump administration this. You could be like, they also do hard power.
Yes, they love hard power.
Listen, it's not just funding weird student groups in Ukraine or whatever, or China.
I mean, it is also funding weird student groups in Ukraine, quite literally, yeah.
But, we're doing the student groups, but we're also guns. Guns are involved.
Guns are involved. Trump seems like he loves guns. Actually, I've never seen Trump talk about guns.
I feel like it's somewhere.
I feel like he's got to be like, we love guns. I love a gun. I am a gun.
There's presumably, back in the, Mueller days where, the pink pussy hat style days.
I forgot about that.
There is, listen, I'm just going to say, if you're going to blame anyone for Kamala Harris, where were the pussy hats?
Where were the pussy hat people?
Where were the pussy hats?
There were so many of them for a while.
Or who are the people in the Handmaid's Tale?
The Handmaid's Tale ladies. I think they're the ones who stuck around with Kamala, if I'm being honest. I think they were the ones holding it down for Kamala.
But they didn't put on
a show.
I want to see costumes.
The costumes would have been a nice addition.
But I'm sure one of has handy on their phone, maybe made into a mug that they got off of Zazzle.
Yes.
Some quote about Trump and guns and how much he loves them.
Probably. I bet you're right. So basically what's important to know is that every single president since this thing was...
No, I have been seeing slideshows on the internet of hey, remember when teeth looked normal from the 90s?
This is what your internet activity looks like?
Rocks, trains,
and teeth, and 90s teeth.
But it's hey, here's Jennifer Love Hewitt having normal teeth.
I gotta look up her teeth now. Jesus.
But you gotta look up where it's she has nice teeth.
Jennifer Love Hewitt. Do I have to type in 90s?
Yeah, I know.
90s
so I don't know what her teeth look like now.
Okay, all right. They look great.
But whereas, like, it looks like real teeth.
They look like real teeth. You're right.
And I think people they want analog teeth.
The people yearn for the teeth.
For real teeth.
For real teeth. Okay, I love it. I get it. I am still gonna get the Turkish dentures that look like chiclets.
So now you're denying the Armenian genocide.
Yeah. Wow. Fuck. See, why can't anybody cancel me for that?
I
always gotta get canceled for something I didn't even fucking do. All right, so we're gonna start off going through every single president in order and talk about some things that happened under them with USAID. This is gonna be the structure of this episode. We're gonna go by president.
So we're starting with Kennedy.
We're starting with Kennedy, and obviously we're gonna talk about just the creation with Kennedy. Really. Mm-hmm. He utilizes it a little bit, but we're not really going to get into some interesting operations until we start getting into Johnson and Vietnam and Laos, and you get the picture.
Yeah.
So, Kennedy, JFK, 1961 to 1963. Rather famously, his presidency was cut short.
Ask not what your country can do for you.
Was that him? That was him?
I'm giving you a face.
Oh, you
the
are.
What? What the?
I didn't remember that. I'm sorry. I didn't remember that was him. It makes sense. I think in my head I thought it was Nixon.
You thought somewhat famously the person who got essentially outflanked to the right on Cold War shit by Kennedy, which is always so like where he like at one point Kennedy during the campaign or whatever was like, yeah, man, this guy over here is like soft on communists. What the fuck is that? About fucking Nixon, who had been a part of like the fucking security state.
I wonder if Kamala's team was taking notes from the JFK run.
I mean, it worked for JFK.
It did not work for Kamala.
He was a very handsome man by 1960 standards.
I think that Kamala isn't attract. I don't think objectifying politicians is useful, but if we're gonna, Kamala's a handsome woman. There's nothing wrong with how she looks. There's all the evil actions.
I don't think I've ever. I think I have more opinions about Tim Walz's relative attractiveness.
Really?
Than
that's more socially appropriate, I think. Tim Walz, not so attractive in my opinion.
He gives off. I feel like he probably has vegetarian options at his barbecue.
I bet he does. He does have that kind of a vibe. But I'm pretty sure he is also evil. They're all evil. None of them are not evil.
You know what? They have officially become footnotes.
And oh my god, they have. Wow. Yeah. Okay, it's gonna be like John Kerry. Nobody remembers that guy. I feel like a lot of American politics could be kind of made more efficient if instead of elections we just held beauty pageants. We paraded them all on stage. We saw how they looked in evening wear. Maybe they get to do a little talent show.
If I'm being perfectly honest, the second you said John Kerry's name, I thought, I wonder if I could find a Swift Boat Veterans for Truth baseball cap on eBay.
Oh, I bet you could.
To go with my Oliver North for President t-shirt.
Oliver North for President t-shirt is so good. I can't believe you even have that.
It's like, I want people to be like, this isn't like a Trump conservative type merch situation. This is like, he's like deep cuts.
I mean, this is you edgelording. This is like my friend who's really interested in environmentalism and health. When I got her a Monsanto hat for her birthday, and it's like very edgelord. She doesn't wear it, but she's like, "Ooh, edgelord Monsanto hat." This is like like the Oliver North for President is like your edgelord item.
I only wear it on laundry day.
Yeah, my edgelord item, I don't know if you can see David here in the room it is the Fun in the Sun Saudi Arabia patch. Ooh. That is a U.S. military patch, which is absolutely fucking deranged. I can't wear it on anything because it's deranged, but I got it at a flea market and was like, what the fuck?
I also have an Idi Amin t-shirt that's...
What's that?
Dictator.
Oh, from where?
Ghana, I think. Okay.
That's an opportunity for me to learn more. Okay, so we're in the JFK era. Kennedy, of course, the one who created this, and Kennedy's views of foreign aid were shaped primarily by a work of fiction, according to a lot of people close to him. I'm not sure how true this is, but this is the lore about it.
This makes sense for... Okay, so what's the novel?
1958 novel The Ugly American by William J. Lederer and Eugene Burdick. And all I think when I hear The Ugly American is that Big Black song. Speaking of edgelords.
You know what? Steve Albini, real growth in his life.
He really did. He rejected his edgelord ways. He came around. I just had this conversation with somebody recently. I was like, Steve Albini, I fucked with till his dying day because he came out of it and was like, a lot of those Gen X guys, I realized that they were not joking. They were bad people. And I was like, oh no, I don't want this.
Though I will say that, like, even in the early 90s, I can't remember, like, the Jesus lizard guy or whatever, like, apparently someone, like, walked up to him in Chicago in, like, 1994 or some shit.
Yeah.
And was like, you're a shithead, I'm a shithead, or whatever. And he was like, oh, I think you're mistaking me for the people I write songs about. And I feel like that was...
It's really funny. I do like Jesus Lizard, but Steve Albini, I like Steve Albini. Anyway, so, the book detailed the exploits of Americans, right, the United States, in a fictional Asian country. And it was basically just a story about how the communists kept outsmarting them. And this book ended up being a bestseller. It was there for 76 weeks. Kennedy became a senator in 1953. The book came out in 1958, right? So Kennedy, as a senator, was so enthusiastic about the book that he got copies for all of his Senate colleagues and also took out a full-page ad in the New York Times praising its depiction of Americans working overseas. I think he missed the point, baby.
I'm just gonna say there is a book that I think came out around the same time with similar title that also maybe should have been on his reading list. The Quiet American, where the basic premise of The Quiet American is that the only quiet American is a dead American.
Yeah. So The Ugly American, though, did raise some concerns about foreign aid. And there were 6 different major studies in the United States aid program that were conducted during the late 1950s before Kennedy created USAID, when we were doing just like a lot of different smaller kind of aid projects. And most of them were very, very critical about how the United States was administering aid to other countries. There wasn't a lot of accountability. There was all these multiple competing agencies. They had overlapping and contradictory mandates. Public support was like not really there. Everyone was like, why are we doing this? And the U.S. government was like, okay, implementing foreign assistance programs in the developing world could be our new front line against communism if we play our cards right, but it's more difficult than we're thinking it is. So, USAID was created kind of from Kennedy's experiences with The Ugly American, coming from being a senator and seeing all these programs in the 1950s, and also identifying it as an opportunity, if used correctly, to help fight communism. And as a result, USAID from its inception was really viewed as a byproduct, or not even a byproduct, a component of the State Department, of our military agenda around the world.
So this is, right, like, an extension of the same logic that produces the sort of Marshall Plan and, like, the post-war thing, which was, if I remember correctly, to keep Germany down, France in, and the Soviets out.
Yeah, exactly. So these are anti-communist aid efforts, and we can see that even talking about The Ugly Americans, we're talking about, a lot of militaristic kind of fighting the communists in an Asian country. We obviously know what's going on. This is 1958. Those of you who followed along with our Patreon book club, you know that the United States had just suffered... Not even suffered. I mean, we enacted a lot of hell in Korea in the 1950s, right, against North Korea, the communists in North Korea. But even though we devastated North Korea, we bombed 80% of their infrastructure, as everybody knows. We killed, the most common estimate is 1 in 5 people, like not soldiers, but like people in the North, in the DPRK. Some estimates are as low as 1 in 10, some are as high as 1 in 4, But this is what we're really coming from. So this idea that even though we did all of that, we still were not technically able to defeat North Korea.
And, I mean, additionally, in Europe, some of the most popular people are left-wing people who had come out of the experience of World War II with a lot of, like, hey, you know who's really good at fighting Nazis and fascists and who, thereby extraordinarily popular throughout Europe?
Communists.
left-wing parties more generally, right? Like, so
yeah.
socialists, various whatever, like anyone who like could like demonstrate a big anti-fascist type thing, and some form of nascent nationalism slash socialism was extremely popular in what was then called the Third World.
Right. Totally. So this is kind of what's going on politically, and USAID is really identified as a tool in our kind of militaristic imperialist pursuits. So once it gets started, you know, it really is a part of the State Department, and they kind of had mutual accommodations. But from the beginning, the State Department really was not into USAID because they were like, well, you're not a formal part of us. You have too much autonomy. You have too much independence. This should just be a part of the State Department. And the State Department even wrote, and they said, the aid program is too intimately involved in our foreign relations to allow for the fiction that it is a technical operation which state can delegate to an operating agency. So from the jump, the State Department is like, this is basically another State Department.
So they're like, oh, we now have competition for essentially who are the people in charge of influencing shit.
Exactly. So this is important because this will affect how USAID develops moving forward. So after JFK creates this, right, the next thing that's really a huge point in the development of USAID, sometimes just called aid also, or appropriately probably based on what David's heard, USAID, right, is the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. This becomes a huge testing ground for what we're going to do with this new-ish, right, department designed to help fight communism. The Vietnam War is a fight against communists. The United States enters the Vietnam War, I always say quite succinctly, which is an oversimplification, but still, the United States wanted to fight the communists in Vietnam because we thought France should own Vietnam.
So, presumably, we're getting into Johnson.
Yeah, we're getting into the Johnson era, 1963,
I feel like,
1968.
Listen, just as a justification for all this anti-communist stuff, think about one ardent, idealistic communist returned from the Soviet Union, a big pro-Cuba guy who happens to be a crack shot, winds up in Dallas. Just throwing this out there.
You think USAID was a reaction against the assassination of JFK?
I'm just saying, the Fair Play for Cuba New Orleans chapter...
I mean,
demands a response.
There's some crossover here. So the Vietnam War comes about, right? Obviously, Vietnam divided in half during the war. Communists in the north that are, you know, fighting against the U.S.-backed capitalists in the south. And they're really American-controlled forces in the south. And this is really something that it feels like the United States picked up from Korea. Going into Korea, dividing it. Even in Korea, the communists are in the north, the American-backed capitalist forces are in the south, and we see that happening in Vietnam as well, right? So between 1962 to 1975, South Vietnam was receiving the bulk of USAID assistance. And basically, the United States had this huge commitment to shoring up what we call democracy in South Vietnam, right? Which just means capitalism, basically, neoliberal capitalism.
And was like a weird, like bizarre, and both like Sigmund Rhee and I can't remember the South Vietnamese presidents. It's like Catholic guys, which I don't get. Where I'm like, is that a big thing?
I think it could have been though. Yeah, I think that feels right. So, while South Vietnam was receiving the bulk of the aid from 1962 to 1975, really we started in 1961, and it started to kind of peter out around 1972. But in this pursuit, it's not like USAID was just fighting communism. Remember, if anything, it has to at least have a front of doing humanitarian operations.
So they're like, hey, here's some food.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They've got schools, they've got health clinics, they have hospitals, they have highways, they have hydroelectric facilities, they have industrial centers, they have farming co-ops, food, right? The agency also sends thousands of agricultural experts, doctors, nurses, teachers, engineers, intelligence agents, and civilian advisors out there to help get this stuff up and running.
I love how you just...
you just gloss
agents,
it
where you're
yeah.
I'm assuming that some of this is like, hey man, you're like an agricultural expert. Why don't you, like, listen, multitask?
Yeah, why don't you go over there and do some real spy versus spy shit, too, for us? More than 700 American doctors served tours in the USAID-built South Vietnamese hospitals.
That's cool.
We were trying to be Cuba. They're always exporting doctors out of Cuba.
Yeah, it's gonna be. We would have to train more doctors to meet Cuba's per capita.
Cuba has so many doctors, and so many doctors are sending. If you guys don't know this, Cuba sends doctors on humanitarian missions all around the world because they have so many doctors.
If I understand this correctly, and this was a statistic I heard some time ago, the largest per capita contribution to Doctors Without Borders per country is Cuba.
It's Cuba. I've also heard similar things, yeah. So in 1967, a lot of USAID's work was part of this military CIA-dominated program called the Civil Operations and Rural Development Support Program. And this was probably the most famous component of USAID in Vietnam. It's abbreviated to CORDS, C-O-R-D-S. And it was kind of the brainchild of Robert Comer, who was Lyndon Johnson, the president's special assistant for pacification in Vietnam. So Comer was responsible for the government's non-military efforts to do what they called pacifying Viet Cong-controlled areas, communist-controlled areas, and return them to South Vietnamese governmental control. So this is a really interesting thing.
So, pacify Viet Cong-controlled areas.
Yeah,
that
but
sounds...
non-military. So it's kind of just like colonizing, maybe?
I mean, it sounds like they were probably going in and being like, a lot of leafleting.
I was imagining they're just like, we built a school here, it's ours now.
Yeah, I was assuming maybe that, but also, like, I'm just imagining that, like, every annoying, like, Lyndon LaRouche type, they got their start leafleting.
They definitely were running counterinsurgency programs, for sure. So, CORDS was doing all of these diverse counterinsurgency kind of methods, and this was all, again, under USAID working with the CIA. So under CORDS, USAID personnel would work in conjunction with American and South Vietnamese military and CIA personnel all throughout the country, and they would set up programs that were designed to win over the hearts and minds of the Vietnamese peasants, to get them to favor the South Vietnamese government, backed by the United States, obviously, and, not really have the same support going on for the North. So they were trying to turn average Vietnamese people against the communists in Vietnam and be like, wow, we got so much assistance here through the American-backed capitalist forces. They're the ones for us. So CORDS in particular helped the South Vietnamese develop and then support this national police force and local militias known as the Regional and Popular Forces. So also included in CORDS, we had this thing called the Phoenix program, which you may have heard of. Have you heard of it?
Yep.
Highly controversial. And this was designed to totally obliterate the rural Viet Cong infrastructure.
This is where you get the death flights and shit like that. And this is also where Daryl Gates, future chief of police for the LAPD, was trained in the Phoenix program, which was basically a large-scale torture program. Yes,
it was horrifying. And it began in July of 1968. And under this, South Vietnamese and American intelligence operatives would basically gather information on people they suspected of being guerrillas, and then they would work to capture, convert, torture, and kill them in really brutal ways. And this program lasted until 1972. A few USAID people, including somebody named Jean-Paul Van, who was a development officer from 1965 to 1967 and a CORDS advisor from 1968 to 1971, really gained notoriety during their tours of duty in Vietnam for being super outspoken critics of U.S. policy, and in particular things like the Phoenix program under CORDS. So USAID, they were the people doing the Phoenix program.
Which, and I think it's worth that the Phoenix program was also a part of the development of PSYOP we're doing psychological, not what conservatives think of when they think of PSYOP.
Yeah, no, an actual psychological torture campaign. So USAID, it's not like they were just a non-militant division. They were actually out there engaging in torture, in murder, in capture of people they suspected of being insurgents, communists.
The thing about the death flights is worth emphasizing exactly what that was, that was the taking someone in a helicopter and dropping them out of the helicopter.
Yes.
Also, weirdly, at the same time, or in roughly the same period, the French colonial police were doing similar things in Algeria.
And then later on, we would see the same thing replicated in Operation Condor in South America.
Yeah.
So this is a really common thing, and it is often used against communists specifically. So if you're ever on the internet like I am and it's a cesspool, you will see memes where people who hate communists will just post like helicopters. And that's what that's referencing. They're like, I'm going to throw you out of a helicopter, you dirty fucking commie, basically.
Who are these? I feel like that is...
like Twitter trolls.
That's
you know what's weird? You know what's weird, just going back to my internet thing, is that I feel more comfortable on Twitter because it's more literal. People will literally tell you what they think versus on an app like TikTok. It's very like coded, secret meanings of things. It's very, very difficult. Whereas on Twitter, some guy will be like, no, I literally want to murder you. And you're like, well, at least I know where I stand with you. Okay.
I mean, that's, you love X, the everything app.
Nobody is calling it that. Is that their slogan?
They are.
Jesus, how do you know that? I'm on that thing all the time. I don't know that.
You love... I was trying to find out why the audio quality was weird on the halftime show the other day, and I downloaded X, the everything app.
Oh my god. It's so embarrassing.
And then immediately was like, this is the worst thing that I've ever done. Why the fuck am I doing this? And
you know what? Some of us have been there a long time. I've been on that thing since 2011. I'm in. You can pry it from my cold dead hands at this point.
You can't find people talking about the cool agates that they found on the beach.
I bet you can. There's a menswear guy that's very popular.
I don't like that.
I think you actually would like it, regrettably.
I don't like that. You said the phrase menswear, and some small dark part of my soul died.
That's what people think, but you don't. He's very likable. He's very charming, and I need to take like, not advice, because he's not giving advice. I need to take a cue from him. He just trolls people constantly.
Yeah.
So I need to do that. He trolls his haters constantly. I find it very inspiring. I quite like his energy he brings to the app.
I swear, if you followed my Trains and Rocks path, no problems.
My For You page is pretty good with the Sims content, but people keep yelling at me about shit I never did.
Have I ever said one fucking thing on the internet?
No. Yes! Podcast, many things. You can't even use that anymore.
God, this is...
Foiled.
You
Foiled.
roped
I brought you
me
in.
to your vicious cycle of...
Welcome to my hell, David. I'm dragging you down with me.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so... we've got this horrible, fucked up situation, cords, right, going on, handling the Phoenix program, all under USAID. So we know that at least by the time the Vietnam War was happening, USAID had a militarized component to it, not just your normal aid type behavior. Usually people going out and building schools and giving clean drinking water aren't taking suspected communists in death flights on helicopters.
I have to imagine that, like, in the, like... let's say you're some, like, young, idealistic liberal of the, like, Johnson Great Society style thing, where you're like, we're doing civil rights, oh my god, we're gonna do civil rights in Vietnam. Hell yeah, that rocks. And then it's like, you go to your little training thing, and the first day is, like, agriculture, and then it's, like, clean water, and then it's, like, here's a school, and then it's like, so you want to get, like, to, like, a reasonable altitude and, like, scare them a couple times before you throw, like, that must be a weird day.
It's got to be a weird day in the training stuff. Yeah. You know Richard Holbrooke, right? Do you know who he is?
Not personally.
Not personally. He was the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations for All. He also was a USAID province advisor in Vietnam from 1963 to 1964, and he became quite prominent in American politics. Mm-hmm. So a lot of American politicians were doing exactly what you're describing, David. They're showing up, and they're like, all right, teach me about the fucking death flights, I guess. Mm-hmm. So most of the people who worked for USAID didn't go on to have these, like, illustrious political careers, right, in Vietnam. But they did have, I guess, like, a place in American history, just because we know now how fucked up Operation Phoenix was.
So they're not footnotes.
They
get
footnotes.
a paragraph.
They get a paragraph in American history. USAID's entire mission in the war was really underreported when we first started talking about the Vietnam War and, like, war literature, but has since then really been established now that we've heard more from people who are like, yeah, I was in this fucked up thing, this is what USAID was doing. So the reason why I think it's important is that, like, at the time, the general American public didn't really know what USAID was up to. And I think that, I'm not going to speculate wildly, obviously, but it makes sense that probably the American public today doesn't really know everything USAID is up to similarly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, right, at this point, you can talk about the American public perception of our foreign influence as either being cynical or ignorant. Those are,
Yes.
like, I feel like the two positions you can have. I don't think there's anyone who is, like, you can't have some, like, fucking Great Society-ass Johnson liberal who's like, oh my god, civil rights is happening, that rocks, we're doing cool education stuff, we're desegregating schools, we're just gonna do that, but, like, in Vietnam, and that's gonna rock. That person doesn't exist in, like, American life now.
I think that the Democrats, though, right now are really trying, like, okay, so I talked about USAID today on TikTok, and a lot of the comments were like, but USAID helps people. Think about all the poor people in Haiti who are going to be affected by not getting aid from USAID.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like, there is, like, some truth to that in the sense that it's like, I mean, someone isn't getting actual material aid.
Yeah.
From, like, because of this. And it's like, okay, so, like, the sort of condition of that aid, of the school, or the birth control, or whatever, like, has always been like, well, there's, like, a gun. There's a gun like, pointed at your head. It's like, sorry, like, you get this. It's a real, let's call it, protectionist racket in, like, an old school mafia style.
Right. It's like, who looks out for you? We look out for you. Stick with us. Don't make waves.
Definitely pay us our fucking
yeah. And pay.
cut.
Well, that's to the government. I was thinking to the people, but you're right. And to the government, it's like, pay us our cut. So the other thing that's really, I feel, super significant under the Johnson administration when it comes to USAID is Brazil. And Brazil is really significant because of this one specific USAID worker named Dan Mitrione. Have you heard of Dan Mitrione?
No.
Dan Mitrione is a significant character who's going to span 2 presidential administrations working with USAID.
So this guy, he gets, like, 2 paragraphs.
He gets 2 paragraphs, all right. And the specific thing about Dan Mitrione and just his job and how casually his job is discussed is that it really gives us a lot of insight into how USAID was working and the depths to which it was not just an aid organization, and it was a highly militarized, violent force of undermining governments and attempting to facilitate anti-communist regime change. So Dan Mitrione was working in this role during the 1964 U.S.-backed military coup that ousted the democratically elected anti-communist president Goulart in Brazil, who had committed, basically a sin in the eyes of the U.S. government of advocating moderately redistributive economic policies. So he was like, what if we redistributed a little bit of the wealth? And then the United States was like, absolutely fucking not. Even though you're anti-communist, that sounds like commie shit, you're out. And Dan Mitrione was in Brazil working under USAID during this coup. So what followed the coup was 20 years of brutal military dictatorship backed by the U.S. government in Brazil. And by the end of the decade, in support of this, USAID had trained more than 100,000 Brazilian police officers.
So they're basically training the entire...
Yeah, they're training the police in Brazil to do a lot of violence under this brutal military dictatorship that was installed with U.S. backing to help support American business interests. Because remember, redistributing economic policies, right? Like, what that means, taking money out of rich guys' mouths and giving it to poor people.
I got it. Just for the sake of having, who is the dictator?
The dictator at the time, I have to take a look at who this was. This is Brazil during 1964. Okay, Brazil, 1964, dictator coup. Ba-ba-ba. Oh my god, why is this so hard to find who it ended up actually being?
AI. It's AI.
AI is ruining my ability to Google this. Oh, it was Castelo Branco.
Cool.
Branco, yeah. According to data I just found. So, hopefully that's accurate. So during this period, the military dictatorship murdered hundreds of dissidents, tortured thousands of people, mostly Marxist communists. Also tortured, not so fun fact, a student named Dilma Rousseff, who 50 years later would be elected Brazil's first woman president.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So Mitrione, while all of this was happening, his first posting was in Brazil at Belo Horizonte, where he worked on the police aid program for USAID's Office of Public Safety. And that's often abbreviated to OPS. So OPS, under USAID, trained and armed anti-communist Latin American police and security officers to basically do the United States and the military dictatorship's bidding. Ostensibly, they were there to teach the police how to be less corrupt and more professional, but in practice, this is not what occurred. They were extremely violent, vitriolically anti-communist, and they operated just as a CIA proxy.
I gotta say, right, like, these things are how do I put this? Not mutually exclusive, in the sense that it makes sense for, like, a good anti-communist police force to have, like, good discipline.
I think they probably were still very corrupt and not professional.
Oh, I'm sure, but I'm sure they had, like, good discipline.
Maybe they did. Maybe they did.
Like, it seems like you don't get away with torturing hundreds of people
if you're not a little disciplined.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one former USAID director named John Gilligan was like, "Oh yeah, this place, quote, infiltrated from top to bottom with CIA people." So USAID, CIA, they're really working in tandem, hand in hand, doing all of this. And Gilligan said the idea was to plant operatives in every kind of activity we had overseas: government, volunteer, religious, every kind. So these are not innocent aid workers. These are assets of the CIA working to uphold Western hegemony and business practices and murder communists. So before Mitrione's arrival in Brazil, the standard operating procedure for Brazilian police was you find a suspect, you beat him nearly to death. If he talks, he gets to live. If he's too beaten up to talk or he doesn't want to squawk, then you kill him. Okay? So
I'm sorry, I'm gonna go... Did you turn into a mafioso at some point?
Squawk. Wait, yeah.
What is this?
Talk and squawk, they rhyme. It's folksy.
Okay, I feel like you're doing like a 30s Humphrey Bogart crime movie. Hey, see, if you squawk, and like...
You squawk, you talk, yeah. If you squawk, you walk. Yeah, okay, I liked it. All right, so Mitrione gets here, and he is not some innocent aid worker. He actually arrives in Brazil, and he is like, we gotta firm up these torture techniques. So he ends up coming up with a refined torture system that is taken from the pages of KUBARK, which I've wanted to do a bonus episode about before. It's KUBARK, KUBARK. It is a CIA instruction manual that basically outlines physical and psychological torture methods for prisoners, basically.
Sick.
So it's enhanced interrogation, which is a really sanitized way of saying we torture the shit out of people we think might have info we want. The CIA created this, and Mitrione is like, I've got this CIA torture manual. We need to be doing this here at USAID in Brazil.
I'm assuming this is available as a PDF.
Yes, it is. You can find the CIA torture manual online.
And yet I can't download the Anarchist Cookbook without it being a whole fucking issue.
Right. Yeah, no, because you have to do it for the government.
Okay.
Yeah, you gotta torture for the government. So, all of the fucked up stuff in KUBARK would later become known as enhanced interrogation techniques that the U.S. would use in the war against terrorism. And this is where a lot of Americans first heard about it. So this would be like the war on terror kind of era where you see all those fucked up pictures coming out of like Abu Ghraib and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This all comes from KUBARK. And this is what was happening decades prior under USAID, a foreign aid organization in Brazil.
I have a good, right, where was the CIA getting this shit from? Because it seems like, obviously people have tortured people for a long time, right? I'm going to say that there is a qualitative difference between, like, medieval put them on the rack stuff and, like, the weird stress position shit of, like, modern CIA shit.
I feel like a whole episode on KUBARK would be so interesting for that exact reason. I mean, it's fucked up beyond belief. It's horrifying. So, yeah, the types of things they were doing here, prolonged constraint or prolonged exertion, no touch torture, that's the stress positions, heat extremes, cold extremes, moisture extremes, depriving people of food, depriving people of sleep, electric shock torture. And both the Brazilian and later we're going to find the Uruguayan police under Mitrione's instruction loved to use electric shock torture. So one of the most famous Brazilian torture devices during Mitrione's tenure was known as the refrigerator. And it was a small square box that was barely big enough to hold a hunched up human being. And then it would be equipped with a heating and cooling unit, speakers and strobe lights, and you would be crammed in this thing, and it was designed to drive you insane. So under Mitrione, Brazilian police devised this new torture technique also that they called the Statue of Liberty, which is the name just because it's American. It's just like, whoa, that's like extra fucked up, add insult to injury. And that would be hooded prisoners. Now, I'm going to tell you this and think about if an image comes to mind. A hooded prisoner is forced to stand on a sharp-edged sardine tin and hold heavy objects above their heads until they begin collapsing from exhaustion, at which point powerful electric shocks are forcing them upright.
I mean, this is Abu Ghraib, but also, like, the IDF. This is...
I was imagining the Abu Ghraib picture, but yes.
Right, anyone who has seen... Well, I guess seen isn't really... But, like, who has heard tell of the IDF prisons during the last year and a half feel like those descriptions will sound resonant. Yes, exactly.
And in 1962, Mitrione apparently does such a fucking good job that he gets transferred to Rio de Janeiro. Big deal.
Because they want him, they're like, wow, you should be able to go to the beach.
Yeah, I'm sure that's it. They're like, you torture people so well, go to
You gotta be able to party.
Yeah, he probably was partying. So he ends up working in Brazil out of Rio de Janeiro for the next few years until 1969. And in 1969, we're going to cut to Nixon.
Cool.
So we're in the Nixon era, 1969 and 1973, and we're going to Uruguay.
And he's wasted.
Nixon is wasted.
And he's like, what are some, like, racial slurs that I can, like, make up on the spot?
Yeah, the guy did love a racial slur, didn't he?
And just, like, the security state's like, you're fine for a couple years.
Yeah.
Wait, like, you're, like, too drunk to, like,
he's not going to mess anything up too bad.
You hate communism, and you're so wasted.
Perfect.
We don't...
This is perfect for the real power structure.
Until it's not. And then they're like, you gotta go.
Time to go. So, 1969, Uruguay, Mitrione is named the OPS Chief Public Safety Advisor in Montevideo, Uruguay. That's where we are. And he was replacing Adolf Sens, who was a Cold War kind of guy who previously had led an operation that ended up hunting and murdering Che Guevara in Bolivia. So this guy was very notorious, and now so in comes Mitrione to take his place. Right? So this is a big deal. So he arrives, though, amidst this collapsing economy. There's labor strikes everywhere. There's student protests left and right. So we've got the far left. We've got the National Liberation Movement rebels, and they are known as the Tupamaros. And they were increasing in power and popularity. And they were really like an embarrassing thorn in the side of the government in Uruguay, because they would do urban kidnapping techniques. They would do all of these really like flagrant, in-your-face, bold, brazen attacks. And it was really making the government in Uruguay look bad. So unlike other guerrilla groups operating in Latin America at the time, they were not so into killing people. They would actually try not to kill people whenever they could. Until 1970, August, they actually had never killed any of their prisoners. The Tupamaros were pretty restrained, but they also had this very grandstandy, showy form of rebellion. And people loved them because of this. They had a lot of popular support. But as the government under Mitrione now got more intense about trying to crack down on them, their attacks became more intense as well, and they lost a little bit of government favor, or popular favor. So a few years before this, a U.S. ambassador was talking about how the Uruguayan government had this really relaxed attitude towards communists, and they needed a heavier hand. And that's why they brought in Mitrione, and they did this crackdown on them in the first place, right, with this new government. So OPS imported surveillance technology and machine guns, and they sent what they called penetration agents to infiltrate the Tupamaros undercover, like undercover operatives, and gather intel on their leaders, their members, and their sympathizers. And this included somebody named Jose Mujica, who had endured imprisonment and torture before ultimately being elected president of the country decades later. Very, very similar to Rousseff in Brazil. So this late U.S. journalist and author named A.J. Langluth credited U.S. advisors led by Mitrione with introducing what he called scientific methods of torture into Uruguay. They included psychological torture, playing recordings of screaming women and children and telling prisoners it was their family members being tortured, to even more traditional torture techniques like electric shocks again, but applied under the fingernails or on the genitals. And according to Manuel Hevia, Hevia is usually what he's referred to as, so you'll hear him referred to as Hevia later. Coscuyuela?
Sounds good.
Yeah, sorry. There's the double L in there, and I'm like, oh, wait. Coscuyuela. Yeah, I think that's it. Who was a Cuban double agent who had infiltrated the CIA and spent years in the Montevideo station. Mitrione said to him, to Hevia, that the key to successful interrogation was to apply, quote, precise pain in precise place in a precise amount to achieve the desired effect.
Wait, I kind of want to know about this Cuban double. Like,
Yeah.
this is we're doing.
Yeah,
I'm
Hevia.
saying bonus episode
On Hevia.
Just like, what's that guy's deal?
Oh yeah, he's pretty interesting. So, and he is the source of a lot of information we have about Mitrione. Mitrione told Hevia a premature death means failure by the technician. That's what the torture agents were called. So Mitrione said you have to act with the efficiency and cleanliness of a surgeon and with the perfection of an artist. And Hevia described Mitrione as walking a very fine line between surgical and sadistic. And Mitrione said, when you get what you want, and I always do, it may be good to prolong the session a little, to apply another softening up, not to extract information now, but as a political measure to create healthy fear.
Okay, so he's like a psychopath.
This guy's a real fucking psychopath, yeah. So in order to build this kind of training facility to teach people how to do this, Mitrione built basically a classroom, and he built it underground. And he wanted to teach the officers training under him in Uruguay the tools and techniques of all the torture shit he had been learning for decades, right? So he soundproofed the basement of his own house.
Wait, he was doing this. This is NCIS Uruguay.
This is literally like what you think of as serial killer psychopath shit. This is what Mitrione was doing. And you imagine being like, okay, I gotta build a torture chamber. Fuck it, we'll just do it at my place. This is where he was living, this guy. This is wild. Absolutely wild. So he tested how soundproof it was by blasting Hawaiian music. I don't know why Hawaiian music. He would have an assistant fire a gun from the room while he listened from different points of the house to make sure nobody could hear anything. And it was there that Mitrione did end up training Uruguayan police to torture anybody they suspected of being a communist or an opponent of the government. And to do this, they would kidnap basically beggars, is what they called them, unhoused people, unsheltered people from the outskirts of Montevideo. And this is a practice he really learned and perfected in Brazil. So, Hevia was like, there was no interrogation. There was only a demonstration of the different voltages on the different parts of the human body. So he would basically kidnap homeless people and subject them to brutal torture to train people in Uruguay, these forces, how to do this to political opponents of the U.S. government.
This is, you gotta, again, first day, you're like, wow, I get a cool uniform, maybe a sash. Second day,
you're in this fucking freak's basement torturing poor, unsheltered, unhoused people.
You gotta imagine the type of person that's like, yeah, I'll go to some, freaky American's house to, torture some homeless people.
Oh, God.
That's not a good, yeah.
It's not great, yeah. So Hevia claimed that Mitrione himself personally tortured 4 beggars to death in his handmade dungeon at his house.
While demonstrating it to other people.
So Hevia said the special horror of the course was its academic, almost clinical atmosphere. Hevia described Mitrione as a perfectionist, and said that he was coldly efficient. Like Mitrione, for example, to better electrocute victims, used fine wires that could be slipped between their teeth and into their gums. Some of the torture he supervised was what was described as innovative. Others were not at all that clinical. One time, he deprived a trade unionist of water for 3 days before giving him a pot of water mixed with urine to drink. So it was a combination of psychological and physical. And it's worth noting that this is going to sound similar if you listen to any of our podcast episodes about the School of the Americas, which we have a whole series about. This is the United States Army School of the Americas, which was located in Panama at that time, where basically the U.S. government trained people in South America how to be military dictators and torture people and control the population with this type of torture control. There, U.S. doctors actually supervised torture classes in which, again, homeless people were kidnapped from the streets of Panama City and used basically as test subjects to be tortured to death for students to learn. So according to one former School of the Americas instructor who was interviewed in the film Inside the School of the Assassins, quote, they would bring people in from the streets to the base, and the experts would train us on how to obtain information through torture. They had a U.S. physician who would teach the students about the nerve endings of the body. He would show you where to torture, where and where not, where you wouldn't kill the individual. So yeah, if you want to learn more about the School of the Americas, you can check out those episodes we have on it. But it is this horrifying pattern of American intervention abroad. And again, Mitrione was a USAID employee. That was his job. He was working for USAID at the time.
So let me ask you a question. You're back in the United States. You're like a Nixon guy who's like, you're reporting to Nixon, and you work for USAID.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, hey man, there's this guy like Mitrione. Like, what are you telling, like, the back home folks?
You're telling them this.
Like, they
you're
know.
Not telling them the dirty details, but you're like, oh yeah, we're doing it. They know. They're not oblivious to what's going on. And they consider Mitrione, it's also worth noting, a prized asset of this program.
Yeah, because, like, I imagine, like, right, it's my first day in office, I'm Richard Nixon, it's 1969 or whatever, and they're like, so, like, we got this guy, he's rad, you'll love him, oh my god. He has some really innovative ideas about where to put electric wires to electrocute people.
Oh yeah, Nixon's probably like, fuck yeah,
well, he's like,
go.
Another whiskey, please. I'd like to talk about the Jews.
Yeah, I mean, but they're into it. Everybody knows what's going on.
Okay, because I gotta imagine, like, someone somewhere is like, yo, dude.
But you remember, there's so much dehumanization of communists at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's
I
like
think if you're in that government, you're like, fuck yeah, of course we torture the commies to death.
It seems like, I don't know, normal people might...
These aren't normal people, David. The government is not made up of normal people. It is made up of violent, torturous psychopaths.
Okay.
So, Havia later told the New York Times that Mitrione was not like a rogue agent. He was like, no, this is not just a Mitrione thing. Like, Mitrione was really good at his job, but don't get it twisted, he said. He, quote, represented the program of the American mission in Uruguay.
Yeah, I think that's what I was like,
yeah.
Are people, like, I have to imagine someone's like, whoa, this is crazy.
But no, he literally, like Havia said, Mitrione was just carrying out policy. The United States government set the policy, and Mitrione was just really fucking good at executing it. So for the United States during the Cold War, torture was not something they shied away from. It was the norm. This was the normal American foreign policy agenda at the time to, get information and make sure that communism didn't spread. In Uruguay, savage torture like this, though, was a departure from what was considered normal in the nation before American intervention happened there. They used to have what was considered a model democracy before Americans showed up. Remember, it was the United States that overthrew their president, right? Was that in Uruguay? Oh, no. That was in Brazil, right? But still, before the Americans showed up, they had democracy. And it was the United States infiltration, at the very least, that was responsible for kind of shifting how the politics of Uruguay functioned at the time. Obviously, people were not happy with this huge shift seemingly overnight in Uruguay about what the government and the police were allowed to do to people and this egregious torture that was going on. So they were complaining. And then eventually the Uruguayan Senate was like, we have to investigate this because, like, this isn't acceptable. You guys can't do this. So the Uruguayan Senate ended up concluding that torture had been, quote, normal, frequent, and habitual, and that common techniques used to torture prisoners, including pregnant women, included electric shock to the genitals, slow compression of the testicles, electric needles under fingernails, or being burnt with cigarettes. Eduardo Terra, who was a filmmaker, described being subjected to what he called the submarine daily. He was tortured in Uruguay, which is when a prisoner is nearly drowned in a tank of electrified water filled with urine, vomit, or feces. So there's also somebody named Victor Paulo Laborde Bafico, who was a former Uruguayan naval intelligence officer. And he later revealed that the submarine electroshock torture and something that we later would start calling waterboarding were all taught to Uruguayan military officers out of the pages specifically of U.S. torture manuals like Kubark. So Mitrione would, I think we are all happy to learn just a short time later, be targeted due to his direct role in training police in these torture methods and also in retaliation for how much he killed student protesters.
So he's dead soon after this, correct?
He is dead soon after this. Yeah, the Tupamaros kidnapped him as he left his home in suburban Carrasco on July 31st, 1970. And either sometime during or shortly after his abduction, we know he was shot in the shoulder. But remember, the Tupamaros tried not to kill people or hurt them.
I feel like, okay, you're this, propaganda of the deed kind of, sometimes the propaganda of the deed is you shoot this Mitrione guy. Right? You do it.
You do it. But his captors even treated the wound and they apologized to him for doing it. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. We didn't need to do that. Whatever.
And then they found out about his basement and they were like, we kill him now.
Ostensibly, they already knew about his basement. Okay. So what they were doing with Mitrione is they were using him for leverage. The Tupamaros took him and demanded the release of 150 of their comrades who were jailed at the time in exchange for Mitrione's safe release. They were like, look, we got this guy. We know he's important to you. Give us our buddies back and you get your one weird freaky torture dude back. So the Nixon administration, obviously their public position is that we don't negotiate with terrorists. But Nixon was like, fuck no, we need our weird freaky torture guy. So he urged the Uruguayan president, Jorge Pacheco Reco, to spare no effort to secure the safe return of both Mitrione and someone else who'd been abducted at the same time as him. An American doctor, I would assume, there to oversee the torture methods the same way people described happening in School of the Americas, named Dr. Claude Fly.
I'm sorry, what? Go back?
Dr. Claude Fly. F-L-Y.
Okay, I'm saying, because you said Dr. Cloud Fly.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Claude. I said it with a weird accent.
Okay, so let's imagine you're Claude.
Yeah.
But you're like an orthodontist. Let's say okay, just imagine.
He's an American agriculture advisor, but also I'm like, what were you doing hanging? Like, come on.
Okay, let's imagine that you are the stupidest American in Uruguay in 1970.
Okay, maybe he's not overseeing the torture stuff. Maybe he is just an agriculture advisor.
I just like I like the buddy comedy that could be where it's like a hear no evil, see no evil, comedy of opposites joke.
Actually, this might be true.
Where he's like a Charlie Chaplin tramp-like figure of childlike innocence who's like, this Mitrione guy seems like a swell fella. We're in this jail cell together. Wow, he's been and then he years later he's like, I think I'm hearing some bad things about that Mitrione guy that I
Yeah, well, okay, so Mitrione was abducted on July 31st, right? This guy, Claude Fly, who was the American agricultural advisor, he was abducted by the Tupamaros on August 7th.
Also, Claude Fly is still a weird name.
It is a great name, yeah. So, when Nixon was like, spare no effort to get me back by Mitrione, it included a threat by the Pacheco regime to execute all 150 prisoners and their relatives. Like, not only am I not going to do your deal, we're going to kill them all, and we're going to kill everyone they know. Give us back our Mitrione. But 10 days later, there was still no deal and no mass assassination of the 150 prisoners. Meanwhile, Mitrione's 50th birthday passed on August 4th while he was in captivity. Now, a recorded conversation that happened between Mitrione and the Tupamaros showed that both were uncertain but hopeful about what would happen with Mitrione. They both were like, I don't know if you're going to get released. Maybe you'll get released. Maybe the deal will get done. And Mitrione asked the Tupamaros how long it's going to take until he's freed. And one of his captors says, the government's going to apply pressure. It's going to happen. And he says on the tape, we think you are very important. And Mitrione replies, I hope somebody thinks so. So, the Tupamaros issue 7 communiques with the government trying to get back their 150 prisoners. Mm-hmm. But eventually, they do not. And they execute Mitrione. So,
what happens to Claude?
Claude ended up dying of a heart attack while still in captivity in March of 1971. So Claude ended up there for almost a full year. He was rushed actually by the Tupamaros to a heart surgeon and then to a local British hospital. And he didn't die actually. He survived and he was freed after that.
So they were like, listen,
saved by heart attack.
We don't have the recuperative care that Claude's gonna need.
Yes. The Tupamaros are kind of feeling like a Hamas situation here.
Okay, well,
they're like taking care of them. They're like, we're so sorry. They do end up killing Mitrione, but I will say I would kill Mitrione.
I mean,
I would kill Mitrione.
I still want to. I would love to hear what Claude Fly, Claude Fly, it's 1985. He's like retired in like Maryland or something, and he's like, yeah. So like I'm learning, like some stuff is coming out about that Mitrione guy. That all I remember, he didn't do anything weird with urine or vomit around me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he probably is just totally oblivious. So on Monday, August 10th of 1970, Mitrione's bullet-ridden body is discovered in the backseat of a stolen Buick convertible in a quiet residential neighborhood of Montevideo, the Uruguayan capital. And that is the end of the Mitrione story.
At least they put him in a cool car.
They did put him in a good car. It's true.
Yeah.
So following this, we're going to get into the Ford era. And this is going to be the last era we talk about in this week's episode, and the rest we'll pick up next week.
Sick. So
the Ford era is 1974 to 1979. And one of the significant things we're going to talk about here is Laos.
So Nixon, he drinks too much. He pays the wrong people to go collect data. Those people, maybe on purpose, do a bad job.
Yeah, maybe. We get a little, we get a little news story happening in the United States around Nixon.
So, right, I feel that it's like, so Ford comes to power kind of, not as a, we like, anyone in America liked the guy.
Right.
Right.
So, the main thing that we're going to talk about the Ford era is what's happening in Laos. Now, you probably remember from our previous episodes, especially our Air America episodes, the United States, while engaging in the Vietnam War, is really messing with Laos in a major way. Laos is having their own communist revolution. We've got the Pathet Lao, the communists there, right? Mm-hmm. We also have the United States utilizing Laos basically as a pathway through which to run supplies and military operations against the North or to the South, depending on what they were trying to accomplish. We know that the CIA is manipulating the Hmong people, who were a nomadic hillside group of people in Laos, to try to support their efforts and fight against the communists. We also know Laos was the most heavily bombed country on Earth by square foot around this time. So the United States is heavily involved in Laos at the same time that we're engaging in the Vietnam War. So by May of 1975, we're in the Ford era, and the communist Pathet Lao are gaining power throughout Laos. And around this time, we start to learn that USAID has obviously been still very active in the region. We know that they were super active in Vietnam, and now through everything that kind of happens around 1975 with the Pathet Lao, we learn that they have been super, super active in Laos as well. So, the Pathet Lao, by this point, had been the coalition government since around the 1950s, but the United States had really been present in Laos trying to limit their role for obvious reasons. So to support Laos during the war, the American ambassadors used USAID as well as something called MAP, M-A-P, Military Assistance Program. They used them basically to funnel money in and out of the region based on the direction that Laotian politics were going. So it's like, okay, if it looks like the Pathet Lao are getting more power, we're not giving them anything. If it looks like more pro-USA capitalist forces are getting power in the region, we'll give them whatever they want. We'll give you money, we'll give you aid, we'll give you training, we'll give you assistance. But this only happens if the Royal Lao government prevents the Pathet Lao from gaining entry into a coalition government, basically, which kind of goes back and forth over time. In the late 1950s, also, we know Air America, which again, we have a whole episode all about if that interests you, was flying planes in Laos for both the CIA and USAID. So we know whatever the CIA was up to in Laos, still at this time, was being done under the guise of USAID missions as well.
And that they were doing weird shit where they were having to transport, obviously a lot of heroin.
Yes.
But also at one point, a monkey.
Yes, that's right. So if you listen to our Air America episode, you will hear all about what Air America was up to in the region, and it is absolutely wild. And all of those shenanigans were also being happening in conjunction with what USAID was up to in the region. So, In Savannakhet, which is a region in Laos, 13 to 15 American USAID workers, depending on your source, the number changes, end up getting placed under house arrest by student protesters who are getting really upset with the ongoing influence of the CIA and the USAID kind of workers in the region. They're like, look, we need the Americans gone. Mm-hmm. And we know that these student protesters are savvy enough and aware enough of what's going on that they can differentiate between the CIA workers and the USAID workers. They know. They're like, you're USAID, but you're still working with the American government. You still are working with the CIA. You are actually CIA. They know what's going on. So USAID basically isn't fooling them. It's not like they don't know what USAID is up to and they're just caught up in the mix. They're like, no, we know who you are and we do not fuck with you either. So when you hear all of these people online being like, oh my God, but all those poor people in these countries who rely on this aid, what I think about is these student protesters in Savannakhet who are like, we don't want you here. We want you to go. So 9 days later, negotiations are made to evacuate these USAID workers to Thailand, and that flight is actually executed by Air America. And all remaining Americans in Laos at that time are left in Vientiane, and many are affiliated with USAID projects. So Vientiane is 8 hours away, and there we have similar kind of things breaking out. We have student protests going on. We have the Pathet Lao kind of having more power. And we have people getting really, really, really mad at the American influence in the region. And one day we find U.S. Marine Guards barricading themselves in the USAID headquarters buildings that same month of May of 1975. There were also 2 other USAID warehouses that were occupied by the Pathet Lao, as well as student protesters. And one additional one that was occupied by just the Pathet Lao communist troops alone. So internal documents from between the CIA is like, oh no, shit is hitting the fan with USAID in Laos in May of 1975. Demonstrations end up breaking out all over the place. They break out at the airport, for example, while USAID flights are trying to come in and go out. The students and the communists are like, absolutely no. The flight ramp gets blocked by barricades to keep USAID from coming and going. Communists end up searching vehicles as they enter and exit this compound, which is the largest American residential housing compound in the city, and it is all USAID or CIA workers, 143 families. Most of them, though, are USAID. Broadcasts over the radio in Laos at this time start to get explicitly anti-American. The Pathet Lao enters private negotiations with U.S. embassy officials and USAID officials to remove the Americans and get them out of Laos. They say, look, if you want to continue giving assistance, that's fine. But the USAID organization is not assistance, and we know it. So they are basically like, this is not aid, this is not assistance. These people are attempting to undermine our government. They are trying to do regime change, and we're not stupid. So they're like, if you want to give us money, any help you give us has to be given directly to the government, and we're administering our own programs. Get USAID out of here. And all of this culminates in a massive rally in Vientiane, where a crowd of hundreds of people show up, carrying signs denouncing both the CIA and USAID side by side. And they are demanding the abolition of a 1951 aid agreement with the United States and Laos, the dissolution of the USAID organization in Laos, and the immediate removal of all USAID and CIA personnel from the country, as well as the transfer of all USAID facilities and equipment to the Pathet Lao government. So the United States ends up negotiating on a lot of these terms, and they do end up getting USAID out of Laos. But the thing about this story that I think is really, really interesting is that this is the best example we have of really how locals at the time were responding to the influence of USAID in their region.
Presumably the people in USAID are like, well, what was the guy in Uruguay?
Mitrione?
Mitrione.
Yeah.
The Mitrione thing, not going well.
Yeah.
Because that's sort of concurrent, right?
Yep. Just before it, yeah.
Right. The Laotian situation. We seem to be getting our shit kidnapped a lot. That seems to be a thing that keeps happening.
Yep. People keep getting kidnapped. That's totally true.
Don't love that.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta get more savvy. The schools that we build have to be like those fancy schools that have like the rock climbing walls.
We really gotta make them like us. We gotta pull out all the
We're
stops.
doing like yoga classes.
Yeah.
For kids now.
You know, it could be worse.
I'm just saying that if you want USAID to give you the good like, strings attached kind of aid. Maybe kidnapped by USA. I'm not.
You could get things. They have leverage.
Yeah.
Or they'll end up dead in the backseat of a Buick.
Also fine.
Also fine. So, while all this is going on, this is not obviously the only place that USAID is up to its antics under the Ford era. Another key place where things are going on is Africa. But what's really interesting, obviously, Africa, a continent, not a country. And there is so much confusion with what USAID is doing there. People are saying that the level with which USAID officials are conceptualizing political development in Africa, they're like, it's just leading to all these short-term, like, weird spastic projects that don't really make sense. One USAID officer was like, we're somewhat schizophrenic here. We want governments that are free and independent, but also not communist, and preferably a democratic one. Democratic, whenever you hear that in the context of the U.S. government, remember, capitalist. So nearly all USAID officials we're seeing the use of aid primarily in terms of this weird, like, dichotomy, basically. It's like, look, we're doing political aid, we're doing economic aid, and both of them are really, really short term. And nobody is thinking about anything in a long-term way. So we don't have a lot of really fascinating information about what USAID was up to in Africa, but the general consensus is they weren't helping. They were really fucking shit up there, and it was kind of destabilizing and bizarre, and nobody had long-term solutions in play. Now, actually, we could talk about really briefly, before we end this episode, Nicaragua in the Reagan era. We're at an hour and 38 minutes.
If this is going to be, like, the only Reagan stuff, or is,
this is kind of the only Reagan stuff. We'll just wrap it up, and then we'll jump back in probably next week, starting with the Clinton era, which is a lot more intense. So, meanwhile, while this is all going on, 1981 to 1988, the Reagan era, what's happening in Nicaragua?
The Sandinistas.
The Sandinistas. So Reagan famously has the Reagan Doctrine, which you guys know we've talked about before. And this is why the United States in 1982 started really aggressively supporting anti-communist insurgents called the Contras in Nicaragua. Because the Nicaraguan Contras were fighting against the Sandinistas, who were socialists.
And the Contras were sort of gangster businessmen.
Exactly. And at first, the Contras had, kind of been popular, I guess. But by 1985, public support for the Contras had really waned because reports were surfacing that they had been trafficking in cocaine, they were using death squads, and they were doing general deathy drug dealer gang activity. So Congress was like, we cannot be funding these people anymore. We are prohibiting all aid to the Contras. And the Reagan administration, under your favorite guy, Oliver North, began just funding the Contras illegally in what came to be known as the Iran-Contra affair.
Because they were using money from weapon sales to Iran to fund the...
Exactly. And the weapon sales were also illegal, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yep, right.
And Oliver North was really like the logistics guy for the Contras, where he was like, we're going to provide some logistical services for your death squads.
Yes,
We're going to be like the efficiency experts of death squads. So...
Yeah. So we know that after the Contras and the Sandinistas agreed to a ceasefire in March of 1988, Congress passed a law that said, look, okay, any non-lethal Contra aid could be handled by USAID.
They were like, look, we're having teachers do it.
Yeah. So basically, they're like, what do we now that we can, maybe they've got this like ceasefire, we can go back to funding these military death squads, and we'll do it through USAID. So I just thought this was like a really interesting example again, where it's like USAID is not the benevolent, just we're giving you food kind of organization that a lot of Democrats right now are in particular trying to paint it as. But we're going to see it is also not whatever the fuck Donald Trump is trying to convince it is.
No,
a hotbed of left-wing activity. Like, everybody in the government absolutely is misrepresenting what is going on with USAID, and these stories really show us, like, what's really happening here?
I mean, I think, okay, I take it we're in the loose conversation closing up period of the podcast.
That's true. We're coming to the end of the first part, and we're going to get into more details next week. So what do you think about all this so far, David, before we get into the Clinton era, which is immense?
In true Madeline, at the same time, they are doing all the, we built a school here, though presumably not in, the numbers or to the extent that they would like us to believe.
Yes.
Right. Or, like, we made the water clean. And I think, like, the thing that that everyone sort of knows is that everyone's a liberal in America.
Yes.
Right. In the sense that, like, both parties are fundamentally liberal, capital L, liberal parties who would like to extend U.S. hegemony and liberal capitalist hegemony. Take a shot, whichever one of you, globally. And that means doing things that are like Marshall Plan-y, USAID style things of like, we built a school, we provided economic aid, we helped foster industry in a way that is pro-American.
Right. And
Right.
we also sent a guy to torture anybody who has anti-American ideas.
And I think, right, like, the idea that it's like, well, some people in Brazil aren't getting birth control or, like, STI screenings or whatever because USAID got its funding cut. That's like, but there's always been a gun accompanying that, you know, metaphorically and literally.
And in some places, we're going to see next week, literally, some places, literally, USAID was responsible for forcibly sterilizing women.
Yeah, and so I just don't think, it seems like if you want to do the thing where you're like, wow, man, you should really build a school here because schools rock, which I agree with, schools
are awesome.
rock, just give them the fucking money.
Do what the Path and Lao said. If you want to give us money, just give us money. Don't send all these fucking weirdo freaks with guns to fuck up our shit and be gnarly to us.
Just give
Just give us the money if you want to give us money.
And like that can be an extension of U.S. soft power. You can be like, you can like put it like the dollar bills and be like, hey, look, there's Andrew Jackson.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of what I believe one of the politicians in Nigeria said, that was like, oh, when the United States shows up here, we get a lecture. When China shows up here, we get an airport. Or something like that.
I'm just saying, look, Belton Road couldn't come to California fast enough.
Yeah, we need it.
Like, I just waited on the most bizarre whatever they're doing to the fucking Purple Line in LA.
The Purple Line? Really? I thought it was Red Line extension. What are they doing to the Purple Line?
No, because the Purple Line, so that's the Wilshire Western one.
Yeah, that's a short one, yeah.
Yeah, but I think they're trying to extend that to, like, Mid-City or some shit.
I thought they did that with the Red Line. Okay, got it.
No,
Sorry. Niche LA subway activity here.
I will say, okay, so a very, very helpful, though very confused man tried to lecture me on Party for Socialists and whatever.
Yeah, PSL.
Because I was wearing my, like, very, very old 1970s CPUSA pin.
Yeah.
And he was like, why are you joining them? The youth are with PSL. And I was like, this is vintage. Like, this is not...
It's aesthetic.
But also, I'm not like a Trotsky. Like, I'm not like, there's a part, like, I don't care.
Yeah, PSL's not Trotskyist.
No, I know, but it's like, I'm not trying to do, like, weird factionalism. I don't care. I don't care.
You're not, you're not going to join a party.
Yeah, because I'm just like...
David, are you now, or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I think once as a joke. As I think I told that very nice young man at Union Station, CPUSA hasn't been anything more than a joke since the 1930s.
True. True, and I know because I used to be in the CPUSA.
But, and it's like in everyone except for maybe our grandparents' lifetime, and they were really young.
Yeah.
It's been a joke.
It's not been great. No, it's totally true. Yeah. So, I don't know. This, I think, is... The USAID stuff's going to be really interesting. I think next week is where it's going to be more current next week, so I feel like it'll get really, really interesting. But yeah, basically, I think if I wanted anybody to know anything about the end of this episode, everybody's lying to you about what USAID is doing. They're all lying. Whatever you hear the Trump administration saying about USAID, that's wrong. Anything you hear Elon Musk saying about USAID, that's wrong. Anything you see the Democrats saying about USAID, that's wrong. It's all weird and wrong. And they're just a bunch of fucking bad people up there fighting with each other in the U.S. government.
About how military or how U.S. influence gets projected.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the end of the episode. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Pick Me Up, I'm Scared. If you'd like to join us over on Patreon, you can find us at patreon.com/pickmeupimscared for $2 or $3 a month, depending on the tier you choose. You can get access to bonus episodes and supplementary content for some of our episodes. If that is too much money for you to spend right now, though, we totally get it, and we are just happy you're here.